Welcome to Grampy's Lionel Trains. This repair starts with a story. These trains belong to a gentleman who grew up in the 50s and he is no longer with us. I bought the collection from his widow, and when I opened the box, I found a lifetime of memories along with some serious battery damage. I looked in her eye and I promised I'd do everything I could to get these trains running again. Today, that promise starts right here. As you can see, this is why batteries can be so destructive in Lionel trains if left inside. Over time, old batteries leak, the acid slowly creeps out, eating away at the metal, wiring, and the paint. It doesn't stop on its own, it just keeps spreading. I'll remove the shell to see what I'm up against. As you can see, the corrosion is everywhere, on top of the motor, under the frame, and that battery, it's got to go. Before I start scraping, I'm spraying WD-40 over the affected areas. This isn't to fix the damage, it's to keep the corrosion from becoming airborne and spreading. Battery corrosion turns into fine dust when it's dry, and you don't want that getting into your lungs or settling into any other parts of the train. With the surface dampened, I carefully scrape away loose corrosion, taking it down to the solid metal. It's a slow process, but every bit has to be removed. It's also going to get me one step closer to getting this engine going again. The battery cover on this engine is welded shut from the corrosion, so I'm accessing it from the top instead. I'll start by desoldering the wire to the horn and also the wires from the E-unit to the brush plate. You can see the corrosion ate away that wire. I didn't even have to desolder it. Taking the wire from the E-unit that goes to the lamp. Next, from the pickup rollers. Next, I'll remove the screws for the bracket for the horn relay. This way I can try to get the battery from up top, see if I can remove it that way. Thankfully, there's hardly any corrosion on the horn relay. That's a big plus, stepping forward. And yes, the battery's still welded in there shut, won't come out. I'll move forward by removing the front truck, taking off the horseshoe clip, or the retaining washer as it's commonly known as. Dropping the truck out. And there's not much corrosion on it, which is a good thing. I'm removing the screw that holds the motor to the truck. Inside the motor housing, you can see is old caked on grease, thick and hardened, darkened from years of heat and dirt. Cleaning it out is essential to restore smooth operation. Removing the screw that holds the horn onto the frame. Thankfully, again, there's not much corrosion on the horn. Removing the E-unit from the frame. You can see the green corrosion from the battery acid and the rust on the bottom plate. It's going to need new fingers, a new drum, and new wires. Finally, I'm able to remove the battery. You can see the damage that it's left behind. Corrosion has eaten into the metal and spread across the frame, leaving behind a mix of crusty deposits and discolored surfaces. This is the evidence of why old batteries can be so destructive. I'm removing all the old wire in this engine because it was exposed to battery acid and it all needs to be replaced. I'm carefully scraping out all the battery acid from the battery compartment, trying to remove any loose corrosion and crusty deposits that's left behind on the metal. Once it's cleaned out, I'm ready for a baking soda slurry. The baking soda will neutralize the remaining acid that was on the frame. Removing the screw that holds the top plate onto the motor truck. I'll be cleaning the gears and the motor truck. The old grease is hardened over decades. Trapping dirt and grime, it can slow down the motor and wear down the gears. I'm using mineral spirits to dissolve the buildup and a combination of a toothbrush, small brush, and dental tools to carefully scrape and scrub each gear and surface. Every nook and cranny gets attention. This isn't just about making it look clean, it's also about removing anything that could interfere with smooth operation. Taking the time to get all the grease out ensures the gears will run quietly and freely, giving this 2243 F-3 the best chance to move smoothly again, just like it did back in the 50s. Removing the pickup roller assembly so I can remove the wire and resolder a new one. I'll also take the abrasive buffing wheel and remove all the rust on the collector roller and also the rollers. Cleaning the front truck with mineral spirits, the axles and the wheels and the side frames. There was a little residue there from the acid. Next, we'll start on the brush plate. Removing the brush plate, you can see there's some battery acid on that too. That's going to need attention. And the armature also needs to be cleaned. Taking the retainer clip off so you can remove the armature from the motor housing and also the thrust bearings and washers. Focusing on the motor itself, the armature and the motor field were both affected by the battery acid. Starting with mineral spirits, I'll remove the grease and the dirt and carefully scrubbing with brushes and dental tools to reach every tight space. Once the surface is clean, it's critical to neutralize any remaining acid in the motor coils. Even a small amount of acid left behind can corrode the windings, damage the insulation, and eventually ruin the motor. Taking your time to neutralize the acid is very essential. Getting to the E unit, you can see this one's seen better days. I'll start by cleaning the surface of the E unit with mineral spirits to remove any grease, dirt, any loose corrosion. Removing the single contact, you can see I'm also going to have to replace the plate for that. Also the drum, that's definitely going to be heavily corroded and needs to be replaced. Followed up by taking out the double contact, the four fingers, and then eventually getting to the plunger. The plunger has some corrosion on it and require an abrasive buffing wheel to remove it completely. Luckily, the inside where the plunger slides is still clean, truly the only saving grace for this unit. Using a 600 grit abrasive buffing wheel on my Dremel tool, I remove all the rust off the collector roller and also the rollers. At a very low speed, with the same 600 grit abrasive buffing wheel, I gently go over the face of the armature to make sure it's smooth. Also the shaft, on the bottom of the shaft there were some grooves there, so I just want to remove them. Switching to 120 grit, I remove the rust to the sides of the armature. The steel sides of the armature are part of the magnetic circuit of the motor. Rust on the steel doesn't conduct magnetism the same way as clean steel does. Heavy rusts introduce air gaps, uneven surfaces, which can slightly distort or weaken the magnetic field around the armature. That can lead to reduced torque or uneven pulling power, increased vibration or motor noise, less efficient current flow through the motor, extra heat buildup during operation. That's why it's a good thing to remove the rust on the sides of the armature. Once the rust is removed, the magnetic field can flow more evenly, which helps the motor run smoother and stronger. Clean the wheels with the 120 grit also. On most locomotives, the wheels and trucks provide the electrical ground on the return path back to the transformer. Power comes through the center rail and the pickup rollers, but it returns through the wheels, axles, and the frame. If the wheels are dirty, rusty, or oxidized, the return path is restricted. Dirty wheels cause poor electrical contact, flickering lights, a weak horn or whistle operation, stalling or hesitation, especially at low speeds. It also has excessive sparking at the pickup rollers, extra strain on the motor, and also the transformer. Think of it this way: clean wheels, solid ground, smoother running, better power, and more reliable operation. Putting a light coat of grease on the shaft. Next, the thrust washer, which controls the end plate, keeps the armature properly centered in the motor. Applying grease to the thrust bearings is important because these bearings carry the load of the motor and the gears. If they're dry or lightly coated, they'll wear quickly, run noisier, and create drag. Put in a little more grease on the shaft before you insert it into the motor housing. Now that the armature is back in the housing, you want to repeat the same process. A thrust washer, the thrust bearing, the next thrust washer, and then finally locking it in place with the retaining clip. Time to put the power truck back together. You want to put some grease on the drive gear and the shaft, followed up by the nylon bushing. You don't want to over grease because grease attracts dirt. It's like a magnet. You want to also try to put some grease on the nylon bushing on the shaft in between the two drive gears. The nylon bushing has a slot where you want to drop it into the truck, basically dropping it in and sliding it back and forth. Putting grease on the gears, you only need a thin film on the teeth to reduce friction. Just rolling it back and forth and getting every gear lubricated. Don't forget to put some oil behind the gears on the shaft and also the axles. A little oil goes a long way. Finish up with the top plate assembly. You want to lock it down with the screw. Putting the brushes back into the brush plate. You also want to make sure the brushes move freely. I use gravity flipping the motor over so the brushes don't fall out. Locking it down with the screw, don't over tighten. You want to oil the wick and also the armature shaft. You want to spin the armature a few times and then wipe off any excess oil. Putting the pickup roller collector assembly back on. I've already replaced the wire and soldered a new one on. Inspecting the frame, you can see the extent of the damage the battery acid caused over time. The corrosion has eaten into the metal. The frame is still usable though. At a later date, I plan to sand the frame, respray it, and replace the battery cover cap to finish the restoration properly. Now it's time to put the engine back together. Don't forget to oil the axles on the front truck. Soldering the wire from the pickup roller and also from the double contact, which is the 4 fingers. Next, you want to put the E-unit back onto the frame and tighten the screw. You want to put the motor on the frame first, flipping it over, followed by the grounding spring, and then the power truck, and then lock it all down with a screw. Soldering the blue, yellow, and green wire back onto the brush plate from the E unit. Now the part that matters the most, testing the engine to see if it works. And oh yeah, yes it does, forward and reverse. Thankfully, we got this gentleman's childhood train back working again. This train isn't just metal and gears, it's a memory, a story from a boy's childhood in the 1950s. I purchased it from his widow, and I promised her I would bring it back to life. Watching it run now, it feels like a small miracle, a piece of joy restored after so many years. I hope seeing this engine move again brings her a bit of comfort and Christmas cheer, and keeps her husband's love for trains alive years to come. It's a reminder that sometimes restoring a train is also about restoring someone's memory. I haven't reinstalled the horn or the horn relay yet because I plan to sand, repaint, and fully restore the frame in an upcoming video. If you enjoyed this journey, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so you won't miss the next episode here at Grampy's Lionel Trains. Happy railroading!